All right, welcome back. 2021 World Fair, coming to you live from Arkansas.
Tacos for life.
Tacos for life. We did go to Tacos for Life, didn't we?
Go for
Free advertising.
Oh, well, it's a great organization. Yeah, there's three. When people come here, there's three places they always want to go. First, they want to go down to the Sling Blade Cafe where they shot the movie, which, by the way, we're getting a part 2. They're going to begin reshooting this summer. So
Nice.
Billy Bob Thornton will be back in town. This is his hometown, by the way. So they want to go to Sling Blades. They want to go to Tacos for Life, and then they want to go to Whole Hog Barbecue for the cheesy corn. So
those are 3 of mine, that's for sure.
See, is that right there?
Uh-huh.
And once you're done with that,
Well, you get on the plane and go home.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that's great. So I wanted to talk a little bit. We talked this morning about what makes bad repair, right?
Uh-huh.
And we're going to talk a little bit about what's changed in estimating. So we've done several years worth of research. We did one announcement this weekend about kind of some of the research, some of the studies and information that we found, what it takes to be an estimator and why training looks different, right? So the Estimators Masterclass has 14 courses, and not a single one of those courses has anything to do with a car, right? So what makes a good estimator?
I mean, I've been doing this 30 years.
Anything to do with a car, right?
Okay.
And you've had some of the same experiences in trying to train
absolutely.
estimators. But I thought we would talk a little bit about how damage estimating has changed. And I really want the industry, insurers, repairers, everybody to really think differently about how we approach, look at, think, train, teach, audit, estimating in general. Because the vehicle changed, but we didn't change the way we trained. So when I started, I grew up, obviously my family body shop. We wrote estimates.
Were you born in a paint booth?
Born in paint, well, went into labor.
Okay.
It's a big difference, right?
Explains a lot.
There's no respirators, and life was grand back then. But
No, the cigarette was the respirator.
there's a filter on it.
Filter
on it, yes.
what are you talking about? When I got into corporate America, right, and I went in 1995, and I already knew how to handwrite estimates, and I thought I was awesome. And then I get to become an estimating trainer. I'm going to teach other people how to do this. And I had a variety, because of some legal and some changes that were going on in corporate America at the time. I had some people that were training for estimating that had never changed a flat tire, but they had a college degree. And I had some people that would come through estimating school that had been a body shop technician or whatever. But we took everybody to the car and we started it at the same. Show me what's damaged. Mm-hmm. And still we're 2000 and, it's 2021, and we still tell estimators, find the damage. And that's really what's caused us to write poorly and then feel really overwhelmed as this whole thing, if you ask an estimator, I don't know of any estimator that feels like they have control of their job.
So I've probably written 50,000 estimates in my life. And you're telling me that the most important thing is not looking at the car?
It's not the damage.
Wow.
Yeah.
Got it.
Crazy, right? And
Maybe I should go out there and sit down for the class.
Well, that's
right?
that's what I'm doing.
And as we looked at all of this, and as we went in the shops and we did all the audits, and we found poorly written estimates and poorly repaired cars, which we talked about earlier this morning, it kind of all came back to the same thing. So we're going to talk about this a little bit today. Guys, could you fix a car without an estimate? Could we fix this car without having to write an estimate on it?
I could.
Yeah.
Yeah. You could fix it right. Mm-hmm. You could order parts.
Yep.
You could get it to paint. You could do everything and never have an estimate on the car.
Right.
Okay.
Well, how many people that rebuild cars at their house, do they write their own estimate? No, they just order the parts and fix the car.
Right. So an estimate really has absolutely nothing to do with the repair in a way. Even though it can have some play, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, the estimate has nothing to do with fixing the car. So what is the estimate really, what's its purpose, what does it do? Okay, from an insurer's perspective, so I'll put that hat back on. Mark, you can join me with that hat. Mm-hmm. It's a tool that we use for determining how much we're going to pay on a claim. Sure. Right? We will tell you over and over when we are asked in a court under oath that we're not repair experts.
Right.
Right? That the shops,
if I'm wearing that hat.
Right,
yeah.
the shops are not, the shops are the experts, etc. That we use the estimate that we write as a determination for what we're going to pay on the claim, right? It's a guide, it's a tool.
As an insurance
When I started in 95, we had in the back of the office this thing called the claims manual, and it took up a whole table, right? And in that claims manual, the estimate literally said the estimate is a tool that can or cannot be used by the adjuster. That was back when the adjuster and the estimator were two separate people. So I used to call all my estimators tools. It was very popular with the estimating team, right? We use it as a document for the vehicle's condition, right? Whether, what options it has. I keep those records. So let's say next year that vehicle gets reported stolen. I should know how the vehicle was equipped, right? Helps me understand what I'm insuring as a base, right? How many, if I'm insuring 50,000 Honda Accords, how are they equipped, right? And that lets me have a lot of information on future losses, et cetera. It's a tool for determining that group premium, and we use it as evidence of a business practice. So what I write on the estimate with my letterhead on it is somewhat the rules of engagement. So even though if you talk to anyone in claims and they'll tell you that each claim is handled on its own individual merits, right? Which is what you hear from, it's almost like they've stamped it on their forehead. An insurance department or an insurance commissioner looks at it as a business practice.
It's still a template.
Right? So some of people out there will tell me that they've seen an uptick in single lines on estimate that says reached agreed price with shop, and they just stick a price in, because I don't want those things line itemed on my estimate. It's real hard for me to go in and say I don't pay for that when someone can come in and go, well, here's estimates where you've paid for that, right? So we have tools in the industry. What is it, Genie, estimating Genie or something like that? That where you can go in and supposedly download other estimates from the same insurance company in your state to show that people have paid for that. There's a reason that sometimes works and there's a reason that sometimes backfires, right? So that's how the insurer sees their estimate. Still has really nothing to do with fixing the car. Okay, so now if I'm training an estimator from an insurance perspective, I'm going to train them completely different than I train them for the body shop perspective. But let's focus on the body shop. So what's the estimate for the body shop? The body shop, that estimate is a detailed repair plan, right? So we talked earlier about, thank goodness that one shop had such a good documentation plan, because it's going to help me later on down the road. On the Challenger, if it shows up, we actually have a line item entry that says, pre-scanned car, issues with brakes, needs to go to dealer. But then we never post-scanned car and we never send it to the dealer. Right?
That doesn't go well in court.
No, it's not going to go well. But it's a detailed repair plan. Written correctly, it can drive accurate repairs through the shop. Right? So if we think about it, if you think about a body shop as a restaurant, okay, my waiter takes the order. He's the estimator, right? He takes it back to the kitchen, and the kitchen cooks the meal. So I may have different people in the kitchen, right? But I use that order, and the waiter's doing that. That's really what our estimators do. It can decrease the liability because we do proper documentation.
Or increase the liability.
Or increase the liability, which is the cases we had this morning.
Yep.
I may need to have an estimate to meet a legal requirement, okay? In a lot of states, an insurer doesn't have to write an estimate to settle a claim. Sometimes there are rules on the books that say I have to write an estimate on a total loss. It doesn't say it has to be a complete estimate. But I, as a shop, have a requirement to supply the customer with some sort of estimate. It doesn't have to be detailed like what we do, right? It could be parts $100, labor $200, whatever. But I may have a legal requirement to supply that customer with an estimate. I may have a legal requirement that if I change that estimate to a certain percentage, I have to re-update the customer and do some things. So I have some legal ramifications around my estimate as a repairer that the insurer doesn't have. It can, done properly, can decrease cycle time if you write the estimate properly, right? And it drives my profit. What else brings money into a body shop?
That's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
How many things take money out of a body shop?
A lot of other things.
There's the uniform
Parts,
bill.
labor, sublet.
Yeah, but beyond that,
telephone,
right?
yeah.
I got a telephone bill. I got the gas bill. I got to buy the uniforms. I got to get those really nice fancy rugs with my logo that they come and change out every 2 days. There's a lot of stuff that takes
My friend
money.
who comes by on Saturday wants to wash his car and then spray Armor all over everything, and then ruin like the next 7 paint jobs.
Right. There's 1,000 things that take money out of a body shop. There's one thing that brings it in. So an estimator's job doesn't have much to do with the damage on the car. The technician's job is the damage that's on the car, right? The estimator's job is a whole lot of other things. But we've traditionally told our estimators in the body shop world that their job is to go find damage on the car and write an estimate to fix that damage. And then we've made them convinced that that job is very similar to what maybe the field inspector from an insurance company is doing, and they have 2 totally different jobs. So when we change the way we start thinking about the estimator and the estimator's role, the estimator is your business's chief financial officer. I don't care if you are let's say you have 5 stores, you're making millions out of each store, and your business may actually have a CFO. Jason, your wife's a CFO, right? So she's a CFO over a company, and they have how many locations?
13, I believe.
13 locations. In this business, even if you have somebody that carries that title, every estimator that works for you is a CFO, because they are the ones that decide how much money is going to come in the door, and they help account for everything. So they're responsible for the financial pulse of your company. It's not about damage. It's about money. They bring the money in. They also will control where money goes out, right? What parts are ordered, what materials, et cetera. They can project our profits based on their estimating skill. So when we talk about severity in the industry, if we know the average severity of your shop is $5,000 and you fix an average number of X cars per year, I can project your profits off of that. It's going to go up or down, or COVID, none of us could account for that. But I can have some projected profits, just like I can say if I'm Bob's Widgets and I sell 50 widgets a day for 25 cents, I could project out the year what my profit should be.
Sure.
All right, they are the future financial planning arm. So when we think about equipment I need to own or buy, if we think about certifications I need to pay for, right, whether it's to recertify or whether it's training I've got to get to keep that certification, or a class or whatever, the estimator controls all of that, because everything that comes out has to come from somewhere that came in.
Yep.
The estimator's bringing that in. Is that about damage?
It's not like the government.
Right.
Yeah.
The government just takes them where they want. But the estimator's in charge of that.
Yep.
Painter doesn't go out and bring in money. Painter spends money, right?
Lots of it.
But exactly. Body tech spends money.
Yep.
Detailer spends money. The owner sometimes spends a lot of the money, right? But
Estimator brings it in.
well, you got to have a lake house and everything else that goes with it that you've earned, right? But the estimator is the only one that's bringing money in. So they are responsible for my financial planning. And then how the estimator writes and what they do can have some tax ramifications for me as a shop, right? So does any of that have to do with damage?
No.
I haven't heard anything yet.
So at what point did we start teaching estimators what their real role was? We didn't, right? We took them straight out to the car. At estimating school, if you came to estimating school with me, within the first day of class, I had you out in the parking lot looking at cars, or this training tutorial car that everybody's seen in just about every one of our videos. It has little numbers driven on it because we gave you a part test if you could name parts, because we thought it was real cool that you needed to be able to name the part. But we would take you out here and ask you to make a list. Hey, right now I don't want you to have labor times or anything. I just want you to tell me repair or replace. And sometimes I'd put a number on this hood and this reinforcement bar and this headlight, and that would be your test. You just had to tell me.
Isn't this largely that a lot of companies on the insurance level say, hey, you got a biology degree, a 4-year degree, we'll train you. And then they train you the way you just said. Or they're a body tech or a painter going, you know what, my knees are getting bad and my lungs are shot. I should get in the office, and now you're an estimator.
Right. So being an estimator, we
Different
always
mindset.
Yeah, we always told you it was just about, can you tell me what needs to be repaired or replaced, and can you click or double click something on a piece of software? And we've had that mentality for at least as long as I've been here.
So it's not their fault.
It's not their fault,
Yeah.
the way they see their job. So 1995 to now, that's the mentality. So as we started to look at it, why was estimating getting worse? And why was everybody suddenly feeling this pressure to have estimating classes? We have OEs now that have estimating classes, right? We have paint companies that have estimating classes. Everybody that advertises estimating. Larry's correct. I can put a show up that says repair planning. No one watches it. I put up a show that says we're going to talk about estimating. 300 people come because we feel like we're not doing it right. So we just feel obviously the next class is going to make us better. The next class is going to make us better. We take the next class and then we're not better because we're not looking at what the job actually is. So this picture's from Robert Wagner, by the way. I told him I was going to use it. I stole it off a post he did. Every car is a process repair map. That's the job of the estimator. Your job, besides all of the hand-holding for the customer and customer service and everything else that you have to do, is to build a process map of the repair. This is how I teach it. I teach it with multicolor Post-it notes when I teach it in a live class now. It's to just stand out there and walk yourself through the repair and think about everything that it's going to have to do to get that car from the parking lot, inside the shop, and through the process of final paint, detail, and back around to the front door to deliver the customer.
What do you have, stock in 3M?
Well, I get some freebies. So
Post-it pad for every...
it works out well.
Yeah.
And I get those all-weather ones now. So Blaze had
so
sent me...
they're waterproof?
Yeah, so Blaze sent me as a joke, after I'd taught this class one time, he sent me the all-weather ones that don't come off. Well, what was funny is we had been in Minnesota and had tested that. And they had put some of those on one of the cars of the people that work at 3M and drove around for like 3 months and they never fell off. So
And now they won't come off.
yeah, those things are,
They're permanently on.
they're serious right there.
Peeled the paint off the blend panel when you pulled it off.
But as I build this process map, I'm not thinking necessarily about the damage. I'm thinking about what it's going to take to get the car in and get the car out. Sometimes there's damage in the overlap, but usually the damage is only a small portion of what the estimating process becomes. So a process map is a planning or a management tool that is a visual display of the work. So if you go through training now, when we train you, you don't touch the estimating system. We walk out to a car and we'll do the sticky note, and then we may go to a big whiteboard. So there's a huge whiteboard that covers a whole wall up here behind the select thing. And you're just going to write out the process of fixing this car without having an estimating system or lines or units or whatever interfering with your brain. Right? So we go to this estimating system, we go, okay, I've looked at the car, I've taken my pictures. We now go and we open up this computer and we instantly start trying to make our brain fit into that software. And we're going to leave out things, specifically if we are using estimating systems to show us our OE repair information. So what are my steps? One, I'm going to process map the repair. Once I have process mapped the repair and I know every little thing, like, is this car drivable? God, no, it's not. So we're gonna have to tow that thing in from either I've got to go get the forklift or however we got to get the car inside the shop. Is there labor involved in that? Is there people involved in that? How many people will have to do that? How long will that take? Is that an included operation? God, no, it's not. So maybe I need to account for that in my logistics.
Who's going to clean up the fluids?
Who's going to clean up the parking lot?
Yeah.
All of those things. Who's going to seal off the lines? So as I build my process map, I'm now ready to do my research. I have not clicked a line. I've not got the estimating system, and that's open. When you do this, the process drives your research. So we talked earlier about one of the things that we find that most shops have missed. They did a great job pulling the quarter panel procedures. They completely missed the procedures because they detached the battery. Why? Why did they miss that? Some of it is that OE procedures inside estimating systems don't always link or show you what you need, right? Some of it is because they were thinking about the damage.
Right.
They were thinking about replacing the quarter panel. They weren't thinking about all that was going to come in the process of repairing or replacing that quarter panel. Once I've done my research, right, I am now ready to think about, is it included? So we talked about, is pulling the car in on a chain included? Nah. Getting the forklift to move it in included? Nah. Does it take labor? Yep.
We'll ask Danny later on.
We should ask Danny. Danny, if you're watching, we'll ask that tonight. So to get that question, and you see, I've got to go to the guide to estimating or the P pages. If I can't get my own answer, I've got to go to the DEG, and that's what Danny's there for. Does it overlap with anything else? So it may be included or not included, but it may overlap somewhere else in the repair, and I can mark that off. It's going to come up somewhere else. Once I've got all of that sorted out, I'm now ready to think about my operational expenses. So are there things in collision repair that are the cost of doing business?
Yes.
What would those be?
Your electric, your heating or air conditioning type costs, printing paper, printing ink. You know, that's generally called. Basically, it's you talk to your accountant. It's what it would cost you to operate your shop. Once again, they'd have to fixate the electric bill for busy and not busy, but to sit there and absolutely have no cars in the shop or whatsoever. So your rent or your mortgage payment, your insurance payments, you know, the employee role, you know, the employee payments for them. A lot of people probably learned this during COVID when they were dead and still open and maybe doing some fixing up of the shop, but they were still paying the tech. I got no work in the shop. I got one tech working and 9 techs are painting and doing everything. Well, this is the best time for you to judge your operational costs and cost of doing business.
So are operational expenses like clips, sandpaper, masking tape?
Anything that goes in the car is part of the car repair.
Okay.
Anything that's not part of the car repair, that basically is just the building standing by itself overnight, is part of your operational cost to do business. No different than if you fix cars or you sold T-shirts or, I don't know, you sold,
Hot dogs.
Furniture. Hot dogs. You know, that's your operational costs.
All right.
You know, take a look at it this way. If you equate, what would your cost be to run your shop If you fix collision repair, well, I really can't figure it out. Okay, well, take all your collision repair out of there, make all your tech salespeople, and you're selling toilet paper, let's say. What are your costs if you don't sell any toilet paper
Is
or
it
buy any
certified
toilet paper?
or just
No,
regular?
because toilet paper was very popular last year.
You can't buy toilet paper.
So if you're buying toilet paper or selling toilet paper, you're not buying it, to bring in stock, and you're not selling it to get rid of your stock. What would be your cost then? That's the same costs if you're doing collision repair.
Right.
Those are the same operational costs that would be the same no matter what business you have. The four walls, the floor, the roof is all the same no matter what you're doing inside the
So if
place.
it goes on that car, it's not. It's
It's not
not-
part of doing
okay.
business.
So
Well, but
Jason,
it's also, well, I'm going to say, to clarify away from toilet paper, if that car never came in, would you have incurred that cost?
right?
Right.
It's a good way of looking at it.
Very simple.
Okay, Jason, you're married to a CFO.
I am.
You probably have like the best balanced budget of anybody of all of us here, right? So a CFO looks at the P&L of the body shop, right?
Hey.
Okay.
Not that
company name.
different P&L.
Oh. I
So-
thought I got product placement for a second.
In the P&L, we're looking at money in, money out,
Yeah.
right? If those things aren't healthy, what's a good CFO do? They dive in and
Start cutting costs.
right and looking to see where the leakage is, right? So
It's usually me shopping online.
right, it's either what we've bought on Amazon or it's
You're tipping the waitress too much.
right.
No, honey, I needed that 9th driver. I really did. It's going to make me that much better of a golf player.
Why did we go through 2 gallons of milk this week, or did we really need chocolate milk? Can't the kids get Nesquik or whatever? So a CFO dives in and looks at all that in the P&L on our profit and loss statement and decides where are we making money and then where's the leakage? Where are we losing money? In insurance, we do that. We call it claims leakage. If we think that we're paying things on claims we don't owe, usually every bean counter wants to come in and decide, where's your mileage report on your company car, right? I mean, people just drive down this whole leakage thing. This is the role of our estimators. And it's separate from the damage. So my estimator now has to look at operational expenses and start thinking about them in the terms of these 4 categories. 1, parts. What are some parts that is going to have to be, used in this repair? That may be rivets, that may be other things that I need to start thinking about estimating on this repair. I don't want to eat that out of company money. What is labor? I gotta have 2 guys go to the parking lot and chain this vehicle in. So that's labor loss. So it's a labor loss cost. I need to make sure that I'm accounting for that. What are the materials involved? Sandpaper, primers, all of these different things that go on the car. Body fillers.
Polyester putty, flexible polyester putty, 3, 4, 5 different types of foams, adhesives, sound dampeners that all have to be used in 2 or 3 different guns. Some urethanes, razor blades. Masking tape just to mask
Rags.
off while I'm doing repairs. Mask to prime. I love the fact that most shops I see, I do estimate reviews, nobody charges or collects for masking the car to prime.
Free
Yet
paper.
there's all this paper and masking, but that's why I've come up with that joke, directional primer. How come we don't have the directional primer? It goes where you want it to
Working
through
on it.
Bluetooth.
Right.
Just attaches to the car to the area, so you don't have to mask anything.
But it takes an OEM scan tool to tell the car where you want the primer.
Yes. Or you just spray the side with the primer and then just use a razor blade to clean off all the glass.
Right. But and then the last thing is our OEM subscription. So any cost, and you may have an OEM subscription, you may have an all data subscription, but getting and accessing those research procedures has a cost. That's not a cost of doing business because that research applies to that car.
Right.
Whether that's you're compensating that in a dollar amount or you're compensating that in a labor time amount, however you want to do that.
And
But-
normally it's both.
and so yeah, sometimes
Normally
you give you
it's both.
absolutely both.
I mean, if you have an annual subscription because you're on an OEM program, you might want to take last year's amount of Audis and you pay X amount of dollars for the Audi program as part of being part of the program, and this includes this system, so you figure out the yearly one, and that could actually be cheaper if you buy it for the year. It could be $3, $5 a car, but it could be 2 to 7 hours of repair information lookup. Versus going on some of these systems can be around $25 to $30 per day, per 3-day, or per 48 hours. It depends on the company. So you're looking between 25 and 30 for 1, 2, or 3 day access. And then you'd have to split that up for the fees and stuff like that. So just charge what you're paying for at least. I mean, that you're paying $20 for the day. Charge $20. Don't charge
Minimum.
$5.
Because my job as I am over the entire profit of the shop, right? My ability to pay the porter, or the owner's ability to pay the porter, to pay the body tech, to pay the painter, to pay everybody in the shop,
Estimator.
lands on the shoulders of the estimator. But we don't treat that or train them that way. And then when things begin to get sticky or dicey, we immediately turn around and tell them, you got to learn to write better. It's not writing. It's not a clickable operation in one of the estimating systems that you can do. So you can send them off to some class for the day where they're going to learn how to, write a better estimate, and you're going to make $50 extra on every car or whatever. But if that doesn't sink in and click, this is why we have people that go to classes, come back, and they never really change their average paid claim. They went to all this training.
I find the biggest thing that's always worked is when we go to a shop and we're there for 2 or 3 days and we help them run the shop, and we don't do almost no estimating, writing whatsoever. It's a process of just communication between things. How many shops have we been to that there's drawers and drawers, a whole cabinet of drawers with clips and stuff like that, and everyone goes over there and it's like a free-for-all. It's like a soup kitchen. Everyone goes in there for free and takes whatever they want, and it never gets allocated, but they keep filling it up with more stuff. And like, they look at me sideways when we tell them, well, it should be in the parts department. The parts manager should be in charge of those clips and write out, you need 5 clips, no problem. What's
You
the
get
RO
5
number?
clips.
What's this? Now, that's one way to do it. The best way to do it is it goes in the blueprint department. And in the blueprint department, when you break those clips or damage them, they get replaced immediately. They get put right on the estimating database or the, on the billing, and we know right off the bat there's not a problem. So now no one can walk around and get clips and bolts and screws and just put them on the car, because when you run out, what do? They just buy more. That's all free stuff you're giving away.
And you may have something like, we have the Logic ICS cabinets here, where you've got a wand, it integrates with the estimating system and puts
That's
a
great.
material
The techs aren't
invoice.
doing that. Put somebody in charge of it.
Puts a material invoice on there. But the thing is that you're accounting for all of that. So in 1995, right, when I started writing estimates, and we had a paint material formula, and it was $16 an hour for every paint labor line. In some ways, that sort of compensated the shop. There was every now and then something a little crazy or whatever, but you could have a pretty healthy net within that formula. That formula no longer applies to anything. You might as well just zero that out. So I always tell shops, you can't have both. You can't have the P&M calculation and then try to do a material invoice, right? That doesn't work that way. But that old P&M, we might as well just, as an industry, just start deleting it and doing away with it. Because as an insurer, it's confusing, I will say that, right? You're used to this working, other shops accept this. Why is this shop not wanting to accept this? Why do they want to have an invoice or whatever? So we create a lot of our own friction on our own and confuse people. But when you start thinking about all of these materials that go into your operational expenses as a shop, I can't fix this car without sandpaper. I can't fix this car without razor blades and masking paper and car covers and all that. I can't fix it without having it. So it's not something I'm going to eat. I'm going to charge it on this invoice. How I decide to account for that, come up with that in your own way. But I can't do it on a system in which I am not control of the labor rate. So if I go and sit down with my accountant and say, well, what's my cost of doing business? And he looks at it and says, Kristen, based on everything you showed me, you need to be charging $75 an hour for labor, and you need to be charging $50 an hour on your paint and material supplies. Great. Can I really do that in this industry? No, because we have a market rate. And even though I could go to court, I know, Larry, and we can do what you do.
No. I agree with you.
But it's not realistic for a lot of people.
For a lot of people, it's not.
So you can't cut my knees off and then cut my head off. When we talked about a paint material cap, it was always, well, you make money on some cars. Yeah, but I lose money on a lot of cars.
It's paint material, Nate. They've always tried to put materials in there, but it's paint material, not paint and materials. And I don't believe. I believe paint you can calculate or figure out. Because
you measure on the scale and you're down to the penny.
Once again, you measure on the scale, but you can come up like Mitchell's system that they have with these amount of hours for this color, based on this color, our raw data we get in. So if you're painting a Mercedes-Benz C-Class is about the same size as this car. The fenders are about the same size. The doors are. So you can calculate, no matter what car it is providing it's the same size, the amount of paint time, yes. But when you get to materials such as sandpaper, and body fill, different amounts are used each time. So putting a $6.95, $8.95 an hour on there doesn't work. Sometimes you're overcharging, sometimes you're undercharging, sometimes it doesn't make sense. The paint stuff you can if you get the right calculation for it.
I haven't seen an incident in forever when the shop's actually overcharged for that. I mean, I can go back to those 90s and remember I've done some audits that way, but the way materials have gone up. So as we started to look at this, we had a lot of shops that doing the old formula were getting somewhere between $150 to $250 in compensation. But when we added up the materials, it always exceeded $400. I can't lose $200 on every repair. What that then makes me do as a shop is I start trying to press things in different areas. I will then go and say, oh,
We should raise the labor rate.
if only somebody would raise the labor rate, right? No, I go to my jobber and I beat them over the head for a bigger discount.
Right.
Or I choose a lower line of a product to try to make money. Maybe that's seam sealers, adhesives. Maybe I say, oh, you know, when it comes to undercoats, we're going to use this lower product that my jobber has, but when it comes to top coats, we'll use this. And then I have a bad system altogether. But we start looking for ways to then try to drive, because I'm sitting as the shop owner going, man, I'm not making the right net. But if I would train my estimator to be the CFO and not think that their job's damage, right? If I would train them to be a CFO, we'd solve a lot of these problems. Then I can
Well, on
buy
top
all
of that,
kinds
if you
stuff.
think about paint and material versus paint material, anything that happens in the body department is not
There at all.
It's not there at all.
Right.
And anything that happens, so if you consider that, you know, the paint time for a fender is a clean undamaged panel. So we're going to scuff it and shoot it. Anything that you're doing that's beyond scuffing, which a lot of times it's plastic filler. So now we got to, you know, go from 180 or 220, primer, block, and all that. That's still not included in paint material.
No.
Right.
So if having somebody understand not the damage to the car, but the process that it goes through, makes a big difference in that conversation.
And if you start process mapping that panel, so let's say the only thing wrong with this is this car is a dent on the hood, and we're going to repair that. A typical estimator in the damage mentality walks out and go, that's a 4-hour dent in the hood,
Yep.
right? When you start thinking about it through the eyes of being a CFO, of your job being to process map, and you start thinking about okay, what's the tech going to have to do that? You still may see 4 hours on the dent, but now you see, oh, well, here's the different materials, and here's how many times I'm going to have to mask it, and here's how much primer I'm going to have to use, et cetera. So now that line, that used to be a 2-line estimate, repair hood, right?
Not 20.
And you might have had hazardous waste, or corrosion protection, or 3 or 4 other little lines in there, becomes a 50-line estimate.
Right.
Because you really start thinking about where
And that
things
4-hour
are.
dent becomes 30 hours
Right.
worth of repair time.
And that
when you
was-
finish.
For Larry and I was out doing, and then you went with us to Texas one time and we did an audit. Our frustrating part was what we looked at the car and saw that because that was just our default. They had never been trained that.
Right.
And we were trying to hold them to a standard that they didn't understand.
Right.
And that leads to frustration, and then that frustration leads to, I'm just not going to do this. Or you're asking too much of me. Or this is impossible, I'm never going to get paid for it. Because it just comes down to, I don't see the world the way you see it. Which is probably a good thing. And most people don't see the world the way you see it.
I don't know. Two of the claims I handled for them, they got what they were supposed to get on them.
Yep. Well, we got paid. So at this point, I've done a lot of work as an estimator. I haven't written a single line in the estimating system. I haven't even gotten the estimating system out yet. But I have my process map, and I have my research. I'm going to go have a meeting with the production manager. Because now as the estimator, I have a plan for how I see this vehicle going. But I need to sit down with whoever's in control of the floor production, go over that plan with them and go, do you agree? What requirements are lines are from our research and inspection, right? So there are lines that are going to go on this estimate that are because of my research. There are lines that are going to go on this estimate because of what I physically saw on the vehicle. But I need to discuss those, and I need to discuss them out loud. And then what logistics does my process map present? Sometimes the logistics are, I got to get a broken down car that's non-drivable from the gravel parking lot into the shop. That's not an easy task,
Floor
right?
jacks don't work on gravel.
Right? That's not an easy task. Sometimes my
I'm
logistics,
from Brooklyn. What's gravel?
right? There's concrete everywhere. I hate that place.
Asphalt.
I can't even land in New York and not get the hives. But maybe my logistics are, it's got to go to the dealer. Maybe my logistics are, I've got to have some primer, and that can't be done in the body per the rules, and I got to send it over to the paint department and get it back. But those logistics
Well,
issues.
logistically, you got it on the frame machine. You're changing the rail. You got the motor out. Now I got to get it off the frame machine to get it in the booth to be able to not only prime it, pull it back out from priming, let them prep it, put it back in the booth, let's say, and now spray it,
And you're
then
gonna do all
get it
that
back
without-
over to
and
body.
there's no front wheels on
Yeah.
the car.
There's no front, so you know
Right.
I have a dolly system, but a dolly system one guy can't push.
Right.
So now I need 2 or 3 guys to push this car through the shop, and depending on how big my shop is and how it's configured, what do I do now?
Right. How many times is the wheel going to have to go on and off? Even if I'm using we have a big selection of the Goonie wheels around here, right? Even if I'm using something as simple, how many times is that going to go on and off during the repair?
Right.
What are the labor lines for that?
Right.
Have I accounted for that? When I start thinking about my jobs to make money, purely, every estimator, your job is to make money. You are paying the salary of everyone in the facility, right? The painter's not the most important person in the shop.
Whoa,
Should be
wait,
the
what?
estimator.
What?
The estimator deserves like red carpet, a royal chair. I mean, they
If
get
you
it all
ask every
done.
30-year body man, though, they're going to tell you they already are that. They already get treated that way.
Right, well, they're gonna tell you that it should be them, and they're
Yeah.
having to cover up all the painter mistakes all the time,
Exactly.
right? The constant argument. But the most important person in the shop is the estimator.
Bring the money
So
in.
every time we go somewhere, I mean, I know that's the lesson that we always want the shop to understand. So writing
It's
an
like
estimate.
the waiter in a restaurant. They're going to upsell for the cheesecake or whatever. You know.
Yeah, if they do good, they talk me into buying a lot,
Oh, yeah.
really. All right, so now I'm ready to write an estimate. I've done all of this, now I'm ready to break out my estimating system, but here are some things that you need to know. The estimating system is just a secretary. So if we go back and think about a secretary that comes in and takes a memo or whatever, that's what an estimating system is. They are not your CFO. I go to too many shops and I go, well, why is your estimate $1,200? And they go, well, I don't know. When I put it in the system, that's what it spit out. Huh.
They weren't in control.
They're not in control of it. They're letting some third-party database tell them what to do or what they can and can't charge, and then they don't understand what's wrapped up in all that repair time or whatever, so they don't even know what they should add. The estimating system takes your order. You tell it what it needs to do. You tell it each line. It's great that you have something that organizes it in a digital format and spits it out in a really easy format for the customer to understand, but can we fix a car without an estimate?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Can I make money without an estimate that gets me paid by the customer?
No.
Nope. So my job is to tell the estimating system what I want on it, not to let it tell me what it's going to give me. And then not to rage against the machine when I don't like the labor time it spits out or I don't like something there, which we'll talk to Danny about tonight,
Yeah.
right? So that's what Danny gets a lot of, and he'll do that. Next thing, avoid list. If I go to a shop for an audit and they have created some sort of list, some sort of we add this at the bottom of every estimate.
forgettables.
The forgettables, I wad it up and throw it away. If they have it saved on a computer somewhere, I delete it when they go to lunch. Because it will create laziness. Laziness will create mistakes, and those mistakes may cost you greatly, like the line entry that we have on the Challenger.
Well, and
right
there's
now.
some programs out that go, oh, here's the 5 things you forgot. Do you want to add those? But the problem is they're not seeing the car in the process.
Right.
Right,
They don't know your shop.
there's a logic
It's a
behind
generic
it.
list.
right. And if you process map, you shouldn't miss any of those things anyway. So I'm not against like the scrubber kind of tools,
No.
but if you're process mapping, if I'm thinking through that, right, there's not a whole lot that's going to give me.
A tool doesn't fix a car. Human
No.
fixes the car. A tool is just something
But
for
an
the human
estimator
to-
can be a tool in the
Oh,
insurance
yeah. Oh.
industry. I'm sure there's still
You said it. You're
a
going
lot
to
of
little
feelings
abusive
about that.
get
A little
Yeah.
abusive.
Yeah, but you can create guides. So like this is a sample of a guide that we have. It's got OE tabs, here's Toyota, Lexus, here's Honda. You can create these guides and they can be tactile guides or they can be like on a Google Drive or whatever. And those guides may tell you things you need to know about a particular OE. Like heads up, every Toyota hit in a front end is going to need these things. Heads up, every one hit on a side impact is going to need these things. Hey, there are 3 approved adhesives for this manufacturer. Average tube price is this right now. If you do the paper format, which I'm a tactile person, I much prefer to turn around at my credenza and go, let me look at my General Motors hit list real quick and see what I need to know.
Denza.
My credenza. You just thought we Arkansas people don't know the big words.
I bet you can't spell it, but that's besides the point.
Not
Why
at
can't
all.
you just say desk?
I can't spell there.
C-R-
Like the difference between there and there.
T-H-E-R-E.
I just, I mean, that's,
Yeah.
C-R Denza.
don't ask, don't ask too much, right? But you can create guides, and those are helpful. Just make sure that you edit them and you stay on top of them for some things. And then the next thing that I always tell estimators is make sure that you have a distinct, definitive, and explainable reason behind every line on the estimate.
And if you can't remember it, put a line note.
Right, be able to explain everything you need. Because if we came in and we were auditing you, and I pull out your estimate, and Larry's, yours are 300-400 lines long, I'm going to go line by line and ask you to explain why that's on there. So that's why sometimes it's dangerous to go to estimating classes and you go, oh, well, I want a copy of that estimate. And you go back next week and you go, I'm going to add all these things to mine.
Right, and then you can't get paid.
And then you can't get paid, and then you give
why?
up, and you whatever.
And you're like, I don't know.
You don't understand the reason behind the line.
Right.
But if you will understand those reasons behind those lines before you put them on the estimate, you will have a much greater ability at negotiating them for payment.
I like when you have corrosion protection. Okay, explain it to me. What? Where you putting it? Well, it's
On the car.
It's protection you go on the car to prevent against corrosion. I understand what corrosion and protection means. I don't need the definition. What are you doing to the car to show me that? Oh, it's going to take about a half hour. Okay, great. What are you doing? Well, I'm preventing against corrosion. Once again, I understand corrosion and protection. I understand what the two words mean. What are you doing to the car to do it? Okay, what about rust proofing? What are you doing? Well, I'm preventing against rust. Okay, listen, we're getting to this game again that you're just not, you can't explain it. So guess what? You can't get paid for it.
Right.
Well, and here's the other part of that. If you can't explain it, you can't talk to the person that's actually paying your bill, so that they can make some notes, so they can explain it to their boss when it gets questioned. Too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Which is the other 80% of what an estimator do, which is play psychologist / babysitter / whatever, because we have to explain and navigate the consumer. We have to explain and navigate the insurer. Sometimes we have to explain and navigate a rental car company. So we've got a lot of balls in the air while trying to also argue with the body tech and the painter and the whatever. It's the hardest job. I mean, I truly believe it's you know, I would much rather go stand in the paint booth all day where I can't hear anything, right? I got my earbuds in.
I tell you, back when I was a body tech, I was like, man, I just wish I was the boss. That was such an easy job.
Yeah.
And then I became in management and owning the shop and all that. And I'm like, oh my God, just to go back and fix a car in my own world.
I used to be, when I was in claims management, I would always have an adjuster. There was always that overachiever, right? We all had like 3 or 4 of them across different states. And whenever you were in the claims office and it was your week to be in that office and visit, you know, they would always try to like come by and see if you were free and come in and sit down and go, my goal is I want to be in management. I'd be like, honey, you don't. And if I could go back then being an estimator, you could be an estimator and still make 6 figures, right, in the old days.
Yeah.
And I used to always say, if I could just go back to that, riding around in my van and just looking at cars, I would have never done anything else. So I made a really bad decision on doing that. But then they would all be like, no, I want to be in management.
Well,
and then I would
know-
have them get promoted. And I would stop by and see them on visits and go, how's it going? And they're like, this was dumb. I go, I know, right? I told you.
Well, I've had a number of people, especially with big insurance companies, that are now nearing retirement, 30 years later. And a lot of them got up into management and then they restructured and they decided to reapply for the lower job. Like, man, I tried that management for 2 years, I'm done.
They're happy as they can be.
They're like, I'm just going to sail on out of here.
My uncle retired from General Motors. He was the management of the paint plant in Bowling Green, Kentucky for Corvette. And he said the greatest mistake he ever made was he should have got out of management and just gone back to the assembly line for a while. Because that was just, you're down there with your noise canceling ear protection on and you do your job and then you go home, but management never gets that. So basically, this is how we're looking at estimating. Now, it's part of why the master's class exists. Part 1 of the master's class is to just get you to focus on all of the emotional, psychological, all the things that go with being an estimator that have nothing to do with the damage. And then when it comes to writing an estimate, being a successful estimator, a lot of times has nothing to do with damage. I know, Larry, some of the most successful estimators you've worked with have never been technicians.
Nope.
Never changed even sometimes a flat tire, right?
No, they listen.
You get the process down.
They listen.
And they probably read too.
What?
They listen.
They read, they listen. I mean, I have one shop in Texas that I've been dealing a lot with, and he trained an estimator who was really never much of anything, young kid, that went through a bunch of estimate reviews, talks, stuff like that. And it got to the point between me doing the the boss's estimates and going over them, and then doing the newer estimator, the younger guy, the trainer, the trainee, going through his, he started to learn, okay, you're getting a lot of red written all over this estimate. Let me review it first, then give it to you. So basically what I did is without him realizing it, I set up a peer review thing within the shop for them to peer review each other. And then when this kid got good enough, the owner of the shop would let him review his estimate before he sent it out and vice versa. And I had less and less to write on there as I went through the reviews. And it worked out really well. So there is a process to do it, but no exaggeration, it took him almost a year
to get it
of
done.
me doing that.
When we studied and went in and looked at, okay, here are successful estimators, here are unsuccessful estimators, what traits and characteristics do each of those categories have that they share, and then what is that differences between the two, successful and unsuccessful? None of the success had anything to do with understanding damage, understanding collision repair, so to speak. None of that was in any of those successful columns. Most of it came into the ability to think in a chronological process. So people that had that ability to go 1, 2, 3, 4 were successful estimators.
Sure.
And so that comes across at somebody that maybe had been what do they call it, a hostess at a restaurant, right? Mm-hmm. People that could juggle multiple different things at one time. You're right. If you want to be an estimator, you're never going to have time to focus on one thing. It's just not going to happen. So as we looked at the traits of
Which
what
means
made it,
men probably aren't as good as women.
oh yeah,
Just
I would
saying,
have that.
multitasking.
Right, I would have that
Sorry.
argument all day long. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
I'd
in
rather
my
a whole
history.
office full of women
Yeah.
estimators, damage assessors than men,
Yeah.
or even damage assessors being women in the blueprint area. They pay more attention to detail.
And there's always-
they try harder.
I mean, there's always that one guy that was a technician, went estimator, and he's a great estimator. And there's always that one person that never worked on a car and is a horrible estimator. I mean, there's always things that are outside the spectrum.
The only advantage of being a technician background to become an estimator is one, experience, usually, because it's usually an older guy or girl, but experience, and two is they kind of know the repair procedures almost by heart to write an estimate. Not fix the car, but so I don't have to look up a lot of stuff for certain cars because I already know it by heart. I've looked it up so many times. And it's not going to change enough that I got to say, oh, wow. I do got to check the airbag inspections after an accident and stuff, but I know if I'm working on a certain Mercedes-Benz, I know it needs a certain amount of rivets. I already have a cheat sheet for that. I know it needs silicone bronze. I know it needs well bonding. I know this, that. So I don't have to go look everything,
Right.
or I know where to look for it already. The people who don't know
Yeah.
or don't have the technical background, I'm teaching them more how to look up repair procedure information than I am, writing an estimate or writing a good repair plan. And that's the difference.
I think where we've lost sometimes is because there's some OEs and they have estimating classes, and those estimating classes really focus on looking at repair procedures.
Yeah, it's
But
not an
how
estimating
we
class.
have traditionally trained estimators, that doesn't sync with them because it has nothing to do with the damage, right? And they're like, well, why am I looking up all this information? What does it really mean? And it doesn't affect me. That's something the technician's going to have to do, yada, yada, yada. But when you start teaching them that your job, you're a CFO. It's not about damage. Your job is to make money. And I start reading procedures to find things that become logistic or sequential in my order for how I'm going to fix the car. Suddenly that clicks. It makes sense. The research is easier. Things flow better. It doesn't feel like you're swimming upstream, which most estimators tell me now. Kristen, I feel like every day I get up and go into the office and I fight. Not like fighting with an insurer or whatever, but they fight with themselves and the phone and their job duties, and Kristen, every day I don't win. I come
They
home
have
further
terrible
behind than I
time
win.
management skills. They are indecisive. They're not quick thinkers for the most part, a lot of them, so it's very hard. And then obviously you add in the multitasking, and it becomes very, very difficult.
But our solution as an industry has been to tell them to go take more estimating training. If you just go to this class, you'll come back and you'll have, you'll be able to write $200 more or
it's
whatever.
a wide range of things you have to learn. I mean, look, if you take a bunch of our stuff that we've done, and listen to some of the coaching, you could have a 5-hour dent on a car for a fender, let's say. There's actually more money and more labor, twice as much or 3 times as much in the R&Is, the non-reusable parts on the adjacent panels that you have to blend than that stupid 5-hour dent on that fender. And that's the bigger issue.
Yeah.
And forget about all the ADAS inspections or inspections after a collision have to be done. So that's what, I mean, like you said, the damage is small.
Yeah.
It's everything else you got to do because that stupid thing got damaged. If we were just panel painters and just fix that fender for 5 hours, okay, great. Problem is, it's all the other stuff that you don't realize or even think about.
Right, and if you're just thinking about the damage, like that door we looked at today, you walk up to that door and you go, that door's repairable all day long. It's just a dent or a crease or whatever. but then the other brain kicks in and starts thinking, oh, well, I'm going to have to do this, this, and then this is exposed, and this might be here, and I found this in my procedures, and suddenly that door's not repairable anymore.
Right.
And it has nothing to do with what is the process of collision repair, what is the damage. The damage itself is one thing. The actuality of what the estimate has to be is completely different. And for so long, we've believed that those have to be two same things.
What?
And that's why it's so hard for a lot of people to understand. Kristen, why is that door handle on that Honda Accord a $3,000 estimate for a $100 part? Well, here's why.
And that's been the biggest thing for me since kind of joining the Collision Hub team is like, forever I've seen people, argue over a half an hour or an hour on that bent or $5 of labor rate, and they're leaving off 15, 20, 30 operations.
That's not the biggest problem, right?
And it's like, it just focus, if we could just shift that mindset to focus on all of those things, that $5 or that half an hour, it's
I got looked
insignificant.
at like I had 6 heads, and I'm crazy when I started telling people you have to, pre-measure cars before you start repairs. But I said when you start writing your estimate, the car's hitting the left front corner, start with the right rear tail light, and people look at me like I'm nuts.
Yeah.
Nuts. And now I see
Well, that's because of a lot
other
of things,
people
but-
have stolen it.
I'm not sure that's why, but
Other people have stolen it and now trying to say the same thing. Start from the least amount of damage or where you anticipate no damage and work your way back in and process map and ask yourself questions as you go along. What do I have to do? What do I have to do? Yeah, I know the headlight and the bumper cover's got to be done and the fender's got to be changed. I'm not worried about that. I know I got some blends. Let me check the other stuff and work my way back in, which also goes back to that full measuring that we talked about in the last class and how most people don't do it. So, it's a process. The more information you can get, the better off you are.
Right.
So are you saying, Larry, that if you're arguing over a few bucks an hour in labor rate, or you're arguing over a little bit of extra time on the repair, that you're probably missing a lot of stuff?
Yeah, you're missing you're missing probably twice the amount of
But
investment.
the thing about it is that even if tomorrow I gave you $2 more an hour, it's still not going to solve your problem.
No, it actually may work against me.
Keep your $2.
Because now it's like, oh, okay, fine, you gave me $2 more an hour, and now I'm going to not charge you for
raising
this,
the labor
this, and
rate
this.
makes it faster and
Yeah.
easier. You don't have to study anything. I just changed the price.
since
now I
you
make
gave me
more money.
this, I'll
Yeah.
take this
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
So the main things here is I want everybody to kind of keep in mind, the vehicle changed, the industry changed. Our process of thinking about the role of the estimator can't be the same way we were thinking about it when I officially entered in 1995, right? And I haven't seen any change in the way that we train, treat, or look at the job duties of adjusters or estimators since then. We're still going out, we're still trying to point to damage. Now we're trying to point to OE procedures, which is the same thing as trying to point to damage and telling them, oh, you need to go look at the procedure on this fender or whatever. And we have forgotten their most important thing. One is they've got to take care of our customers, and they've got to be good communicators, and they've got to be able to handle stress, and they've got to be able to handle all that. And then the second thing is they must fundamentally understand they are our profit center. So today, if you wanted to sit down, even with yourself, if you're a single operation, or if you wanted to sit down with the estimators in your shop, pull the last 3 or 4 estimates that you have closed, finished, completed, and the cars have delivered. Maybe it's after hours one night, you close the shop, you get around a table, you order pizza, and you start asking yourself, where did we make our money on this estimate? Don't tell me about did we do the right procedures, did we write just start talking about where did I make the money on this estimate? Where is my profit at? What did I account for that we got paid for? What did I now not account for that we didn't get paid for? Because that's the role. The body tech's job is to fix the car properly in accordance with the OE repair procedures. The estimator's job is to find ways to make money on that. We all got into this business to make money. We are not a nonprofit.
Right.
And if you made your most amount of money by taking the spare change out of the center console, you have huge problems.
Yeah.
That was my favorite part about total losses growing up. Right.
Under the back seat.
Well, we were also the city impound.
Oh.
So we had the abandoned city impound cars, and then we had like the tow ends that would total or whatever. And the abandoned cars I would get to go through before they were hauled off to like the smash bar or whatever. And I could keep whatever change was in the car. And then sometimes I would find things like guns and drugs. And
I was going to say, that's probably a whole different show.
right?
What you found in abandoned
You know, we
cars.
should do a show. All right, so happy hour is Wednesday night. And it's basically our best of the interwebs episode.
Oh, Jesus.
And you're going to be able to join us on a Zoom, which will be more video interactive to talk to us on it. But if you are a body shop kid, I want the best story of what you found in a car. That can be told out loud during normal hours when kids are up. I just want to preface that.
That illegally.
Oh, I think one time inside like a panel of a door, I think I probably found about 10 grand in cash and a whole, thing of pot one time.
I found 10 grand in cash, condoms, and a gun
Wow.
in the inner quarter panels of a 300ZX.
You can get 10 grand in cash in a ZX?
Inside the inner quarter panel. Yeah,
Okay.
$100 bills.
But it wasn't ones.
And this is like 20 years ago. So 10 grand in cash is a lot of money back
That was
then.
back then, yeah.
And then the hard part
now,
was,
big
okay,
time.
so now do I call the guy and say, okay, we're in control of your cash that we found inside your quarter panel that we're now replacing, but what happens if his wife answers? And is it his money with those condoms? Or, I mean, there's a whole, like, we didn't quite know what to do with all that.
I have a whole, one day I will write a book of all the claims I handled and all of the trouble I got in between husbands and wives on
Yeah,
claims.
yeah.
So when you wreck a car because you were somewhere you weren't supposed to be,
Uh-oh.
or your car gets impounded after you wrecked it and they found that the person in the car with you needed to be arrested and you needed to be arrested for why they were in the car with you.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, that was always good. Or your adjuster gets arrested for that in the
That
company car.
That happened to me once when I was coming home with a goat and a sheep. Just
No. Okay.
couldn't
All right.
explain it to the cops.
So we're back at 4 o'clock Central Time. Daniel and Jim Kavadik are going to be jumping in, and we're going to talk about color. So
Yep.
all things color. I can't even tell you how
Paint
amazing
Paint color.
color. Yeah, paint color.
Okay.
Yeah. I can't tell you how amazing this class is. We have a refinished 20 group. It's a 20 group for painters, and when we started that, everybody was like, "Yeah, Kristen, painters don't need a 20 group. Painters are good at their craft. They know what we're doing." We started that 20 group, and I am blown away every time those guys do a presentation of what I didn't know that I thought I should know as a painter. And then at 6 o'clock tonight, to tie into this show, Danny will be here, and we're going to talk about the DEG. So you need to understand labor times and what's in them and how to find them and how to do an inquiry. Because remember, you have to have a reason behind every line.
Yep.
Yep.
And that's, if you don't know it, then Danny helps you with that. And that's why we have the DEG as a resource. And so we want everybody to understand it. We will see you all at 4 o'clock.
Perfect.
And if you have any
That's
questions.
4 o'clock Central.
4 o'clock Central.
Central.
Central. If you have any questions, let us know. And then